It was the sole reason I wanted to carry out the final season, and that was so that I could accomplish this. The television show MASH was much more than that. Through its combination of tragedy, laughter, and unfiltered honesty, it molded an entire generation. However, behind the scenes, things were not even close to being flawless. The majority of you probably haven't heard any of the new information that Alan Alda has now shared about the drama. These fresh facts include everything from heated fights to stunning casting events. To whom did Alda harbor a deep-seated aversion, and why? What other surprising occurrences took place behind the scenes? Despite the fact that MASH is recognized as a show that brilliantly combined comedy and drama, the climate behind the scenes was not always smooth sailing. One of the most contentious conflicts that occurred on site was between Jackie Cooper, who directed the film, and Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye. Alda, who placed a high importance on improvisation and creative flexibility, frequently found himself in conflict with Cooper, who was recognized for his more conservative and traditional approach to directing. Cooper was more interested in adhering exactly to the script, but Alda wanted the performers to bring their own unique authenticity to the roles they played. Alda discussed these creative clashes in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter that took place many years later. She explained that it was not about both of them having a dislike for one another. The issue was one of vision. It was really important to me to show that the show was real. It was a greater struggle for control between creativity and structure that occasionally spilled out into the open, and these fights were representations of that larger struggle. Despite the fact that Alda maintained her professionalism throughout the filming process, there were a few hot moments, according to insiders from the production team. Alda's insistence on authenticity, despite the friction that ensued, ultimately had an impact on the development of the series, resulting in the characters and their tales having a more genuine and human quality. Cooper soon left the show, and despite the fact that his skills as a director were substantial, fans and critics frequently attribute the transformation of MASH into the show. It became in later seasons to Alda's talents. In front of the camera, the friendship between Hawkeye and BJ appeared to be seamless. Nevertheless, behind the scenes, things were not always so simple. Although they had a solid professional relationship, Alan Alda and Mike Farrell, who joined the show in the 4th season, were also renowned for their occasional competitive streaks. Despite this, there was nothing nasty about it. Because of their mutual commitment to the show and the roles they played, it came about. It was once revealed by Farrell during an interview with the Television Academy Foundation that Alda had a very specific idea of how situations should be played out. The explanation that Farrell provided was that Alan was extremely focused and he had very high standards, which may be daunting at times. The two periodically disagreed on how to approach particular scenes, with Alda occasionally advocating for more humorous improvisation, and Farrell advocating for emotional depth. Periodically, they argued about how to approach certain moments. It was not a personal matter, but the fact that they used different ways may lead to conflict. In spite of these instances, the mutual respect that they shared was obvious at all times. During the same interview, Farrell even remarked that Alan worked harder than anyone else I've ever met, and I found that to be something that I truly appreciated. Aside from the screen, they shared a lively familiarity that was a reflection of the connection between their characters. These two actors always challenged each other to be better, which led to some of the most memorable moments of the show. This friendly rivalry was a contributing factor. One of the reasons that MASH stood out from other shows was the passion and dedication of its performers, and their personal relationships have brought this to light. In hindsight, both actors have admitted that, even when there were differences, the primary focus was always on producing the best show that could be made, and this is something that they have acknowledged. Although it may appear that the cast of MASH was predestined for their roles, it was not always easy to find the appropriate individuals to play those roles during production. As an illustration, Loretta Sweet, who was responsible for bringing Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan to life, came dangerously close to being out of the running for the role. Sweet had previously signed a contract for another program, but that series did not get off the ground, which gave her the opportunity to step into what would turn out to be one of the most memorable performances of her career. It was a miracle of timing, she said in her own words during an interview with the Television Academy Foundation. The timing was perfect. However, the stars were placed in such a way that I was able to be free. The casting process was more deliberate for Larry Linville, who played the role of Major Frank Burns, who was known for his strict standards. From the very beginning, Linville was aware that his character was not intended to be likable, but rather to be a source of tension in the story. During an interview with People magazine, he referred to Burns as a character that one would love to hate. He went on to add that it was liberating to play a character without the need to ask for permission from the audience. Furthermore, he stated, "I knew going in that my job was to be the jerk, but I took it as a challenge to make Frank human, even if no one liked him." He acknowledged that he was aware of this fact. In addition, there was David Ogden Stiers, who began appearing in the show in later seasons and played the role of Major Charles Emerson Winchester III. When Stiers stepped into a show that had already created such powerful dynamics, he felt an incredible amount of pressure to fill the hole that was left by Linville's departure. However, Stiers stated that Winchester was not Frank Burns in an interview with the New York Times. Stiers acknowledged the difficulty of the situation. He did not provide any comedic relief. One of the reasons he was so enjoyable to play was because he had depth, intellect, and layers. Despite the fact that these casting decisions were not always easy to make, they were essential in ensuring that the program had the distinctive chemistry that helped it engage with people. Each performer brought something unique to the table, which resulted in the transformation of characters that may have been considered standard sitcom tropes into characters that were more complicated and memorable. Following 11 seasons that were pioneering, MASH was forced to come to an end. With that being said, it was not an easy assignment for the cast and crew to say goodbye to a series that had impacted the lives of so many people, both on and off set. On February 28, 1983, the last episode, titled Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, was broadcast on television. It established itself as the most-watched television program in the history of the United States at the time, with over 106 million viewers tuning in. Not only did the audience feel the emotional weight of the conclusion, but they also felt it. Just as forcefully, it struck the actors as well. During an interview for the Television Academy Foundation, Alan Alda, who was also responsible for writing and directing the show, said that it was difficult to bring to a close such a significant chapter in their life. As Alda explained, she recalled that she was sitting in the editing room and that she was unable to stop crying. "We were not simply bringing an end to a concert, rather, we were bidding farewell to a family." Every performer has their own unique way of dealing with the farewell. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Jamie Farr recalled that he had a hard time containing his emotions during the closing sequences of his role as Klinger. His statement was that it was no longer acting. It was quite personal. During the final days of production, Loretta Swit noted that the atmosphere on set was a mixture of bitter and sweet. "We were all aware that it could not continue indefinitely, but that did not make distancing ourselves any simpler. It wasn't simply the storyline that made the conclusion so powerful. It was also the way it reflected the genuine feelings that the cast and crew would experience when they were saying goodbye after 11 years of working together. It was the end of an era for those who were watching. The conclusion of what many of the cast members referred to as one of the most formative events of their lives was coming to a close for them." There were a number of creative issues and controversies that were associated with MASH, despite the fact that it was a commercial and critical success. The gradual transition of the presentation from comedic to dramatic content was one of the more well-known sources of tension that occurred throughout the course of the show. There were those members of the cast and audience who did not agree with Alan Alda's decision to embrace the deeper and more frequently somber tone that the series took in later seasons. Larry Gelbart, the show's original writer and producer, is infamous for leaving the series after its 4th season. He cited creative tiredness and aggravation, with the rising pressures from both the network and the changing direction of the show as the reasons for his departure. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, Gelbart expressed his resignation in an open and honest manner, stating, "It wasn't an easy decision, but at some point you have to know when to move on." Moreover, the exits of cast members prompted inquiries from fans. For instance, Gary Berghoff, who played the charming Radar O'Reilly, is one of the most renowned examples. During the 8th season of the show, Berghoff left the show, claiming personal reasons in addition to the physical and emotional toll that the grueling production schedule had taken on him. According to Berghoff, who later provided an explanation in an interview with the Television Academy Foundation, "I was exhausted. I had a lot of affection for Radar, but I felt that I needed to take a break from my personal health." In spite of the fact that he was leaving the show, Berghoff continued to be pleased with his contributions and even came back for a two-part goodbye episode. These confrontations that occurred behind the scenes served as a reminder that it was never simple to strike a balance between personal hardships, creative endeavors, and the expectations of the network. In spite of the fact that the show was successful due to its ability to combine comedic and dramatic elements, the journey was not without its share of challenges, both on stage and off.